so happy to have you here. My name is Nina Ichikawa. I'm the Policy Director at the Berkeley Food Institute. We're so pleased to have this event and have you all in the audience. I just wanted to give a few words of how this event came to be and why are we here. We're really also grateful to have a whole array of co-sponsors, which you can see in our program, notably the Strata Group and UC Berkeley Environmental Law Clinic, who have really given us a lot of support for this, as well as all the schools, the nonprofits, Ecology Center, Pacific Coast Farmers Market Association, many friends in the audience and who helped us get the word out about this. Also the students that have come. Thank you so much for coming. We sort of launched the idea for this event many moons ago. We were excited by the fact that Angie Tagtow was coming on a statewide tour of the UC and CSU systems, and we wanted to not lose the chance to have such a prominent national expert share her views. And we started thinking how we could have her interact with local expertise and have different of the issues that we're facing here in California and in the Bay Area really interact with the dietary guidelines and the future of healthy eating in the United States and indeed the world, because many eyes are watching what we're doing. We're so happy that this distinguished panel has come, including both Marys are UC Berkeley graduates. So we're very happy to have Cal Bears on the stage, as well as, of course, Allen and Pacific Coast Farmers Market is really a well-known Farmers Market Association here in the Bay Area. So Mary Lee will get into the full introductions of all of our panelists. But I just wanted to also share with you that we've recently announced our SEED grant recipients, which is an on-campus research funding program that we do. And actually both of the programs, both of the research projects we're funding this year are focused on food access. And we're really excited to share that. The full information is on our website. But one of the research projects is called Rethinking School Lunch in Oakland, Comprehensive School Meal Program Reform to Increase Equitable Access to Healthy Food, Establish Career Pathways in Sustainable Agriculture, and Improve Local Food Systems. If that isn't enough to do and study. I'm very excited about that. And the second one is called Gender Dynamics and SNAP CalFresh Enrollment Among Immigrant Households in California. So we're really excited about this interdisciplinary research that will be occurring over the next 2 years involving students, faculty, and community and government. So please stay tuned with BFI to hear how those develop. And just, I guess now as we'll go into our program, I just wanted to introduce our moderator, Mary Lee. We're so excited to have her. She's a deputy director at PolicyLink. And besides, as I mentioned, a graduate of Berkeley Law, has been really at the forefront of food equity efforts for many years. We're so grateful to have PolicyLink just next door in Oakland, but they have a national role in advancing food equity and food access. So we think her expertise will really give us some great ideas for tonight. So please join me in welcoming Mary Lee and all of our panelists. Thank you.
And thank you, Anne, and everyone here. I'm always happy to be able to come back on campus. It's been a long time for me to be a student at Bolt. But I'm here today to really join in a conversation that I'm sure we'll all benefit from. The topic that's listed in your program is about how we can make good food affordable. But I want to start by having you think about the fact that affordability is so much more than price. It's about access, it's about proximity, it's about the quality of the food that we have available to us, the variety of that food, and whether it meets our needs for nourishment, but also our needs for a connection to our culture. How food is also about health, and ultimately it's become about fairness and justice. Some people have way too much food and waste it and utilize it in ways that are actually harming our environment, and others are hungry every night here in this country. People are experiencing malnourishment, which often manifests itself in obesity and all the health consequences that that entails. So we are talking beyond the limits of the term affordability this afternoon, and I'm hoping that you'll learn from our distinguished and extremely accomplished panel, but that we'll also hear from some of you, because we're going to make some time for that, engage in question and answer, and hopefully some good discussion. So I want to just take a second and highlight the accomplishments and achievements and background of our panel this afternoon. As you heard, we've got, and I'm going to use first names, I hope that's okay with everybody. We've got Angie, who's really on a whirlwind tour. I was likening her to having like rock concerts at various UCs here in California. So I don't know if she's got a school after Berkeley, but she's already been to UCLA, I think you told me, and Northridge and Davis. So she's touring the state. But she's really got an incredible background working in Washington, D.C. for the USDA. But in addition to that, she brings to this work vast experience, a registered dietitian, consulting that she did in the nonprofit context, working to expand access to healthful food, reducing the rates of diabetes and other diet-related chronic diseases, a background in public health, working with programs in Iowa with the Department of Public Health there, particularly special supplemental nutrition programs for women. My goodness, prior to working at the USDA, she served as an endowed chair and senior fellow at the University of Minnesota. So she brings government experience, nonprofit experience, academic experience to our conversation today, and I'm sure we'll all benefit from hearing from her. And then we've got our local talent here from the state of California. We've got Alan, who is the director of the Pacific Coast Farmers Market Association. I think, as it was already mentioned, the expert for us regionally on all things to relate to the farmers market movement. But he also has a long history as well, working with nonprofits and in the food realm. A board member of Fresh Approach, a nonprofit organization that connects California communities with healthy food. He comes to this work not just from California, but from Texas, good old Texas, San Antonio specifically, a background in communications and political science. And I think is also doing his own growing locally in his home, in his garden. It sounds like it says here that you like to feed the neighborhood squirrels, so everybody's grateful for your efforts. Good food for all. And then finally, and certainly last but not least, Mary Blackburn, who is also a longtime California resident, working at the National Family and Consumer Sciences Advisor for the University of California Cooperative Extension Program in Alameda County. But she hails from, or at least is a graduate of Tuskegee University in Alabama, but has earned her MPH and PhD here at UC Berkeley. So I know you'll agree. We have an extremely experienced panel with lots to share. And we're going to start right off by asking each of them to spend a few minutes talking about their work, highlighting the issues that they think most compelling for our discussion this afternoon, and then we'll move into some questions. So we'll start with you, Angie.
Mary, thank you. Is my mic on?
I think it is.
It is. Well, thank you for the invitation to join you this evening. It really has been a thrill to be able to spend some time in California and learn of all of the great things that are happening here. I've been asked to kind of set the stage today when we're talking about access to healthful food and to talk where the definition of healthy food may originate. The Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion at USDA works very closely with the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion at HHS to produce the Dietary Guidelines for Americans every 5 years. And good timing for this panel. The most recent edition of the Dietary Guidelines were released in January of 2016. And the Dietary Guidelines are really based on an evidence-based approach of the totality of nutrition science. And that nutrition science then informs the development of the Dietary Guidelines. I think consumers are often confused when you see the latest headlines around nutrition and health and think that the federal government is changing their mind all of the time. Let me assure you that the Dietary Guidelines are based on the totality of the most current body of nutrition science. And the guidelines that were released in January, I just wanted to set the stage as to what they said. And we have 5 overarching guidelines in this edition. And there's some new elements that have been incorporated based on the evolution of science. Traditionally, the dietary guidelines had been focused on the relationship between nutrients and diet-related chronic disease. Over the last 20 to 30 years, we've seen this phenomenal evolution in nutrition science, and we saw the connection between food and food groups and its relationship to health. And now the body of nutrition science is based on the totality of our diet and what a dietary pattern and its relationship to diet-related chronic disease. And so as a registered dietitian, as a practitioner, I'm really thrilled to see this really cool evolution of science that is now supporting the dietary guidelines. But to set the stage, the 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans have 5 overarching guidelines. Those guidelines include follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. So again, we recognize that an eating pattern is much more than the sum of its parts. It's really the totality of everything that we eat and drink. And the science now indicates that there is this synergistic effect, if you will, of what we eat and drink in relationship to our health. And an eating pattern is much more predictive, according to the science, of our overall health status and our disease risk, as compared to individual foods or nutrients in which the dietary guidelines used to be based on. So overarching guideline number 1 is to follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. The second is to focus on variety, nutrient density, and amount. The third is to limit calories from specifically added sugars, saturated fats, as well as to reduce sodium intake. The fourth is to shift to a healthier food and beverage choices with specifically an emphasis on water. The fifth is to support healthy eating patterns for all, and that really is a charge for all sectors of society to step up to support healthy eating settings for everyone. So the dietary guidelines were released in January. The essence of them, the core components of them about eating more fruits and vegetables and whole grains, limiting saturated fat, the consumption of low-fat and fat-free dairy, and to shift from saturated fat to more of an oil-based fat has been core components of the dietary guidelines for the last 20 years or so. Those core components really make up what a healthy eating pattern are. The mandate that HHS and USDA are charged with is the 1990 National Nutrition Monitoring Related Research Act. And it charges the departments to apply the dietary guidelines across federal food and nutrition programs. So that really was the intent behind the dietary guidelines, was to create national nutrition policy that then supports or is used as that nutrition policy backbone of other federal programs. Other federal programs such as the school lunch program, the school breakfast, summer feeding, the WIC program, and even to some degree SNAP and SNAP education. And so that is our charge, is to apply a foundation of evidence-based nutrition guidance to those programs. In addition, across the federal family, there are other departments that apply the dietary guidelines. So within HHS, they apply them to the Meals on Wheels program, for example, as well as Head Start. The Department of Defense uses the dietary guidelines with setting military base pay for food for active service members, for example, and the list goes on. And so this is setting the stage for what constitutes healthy food for our discussion this evening. Thanks.
Thank you. So Ellen, you want to go next?
So I want to start by thanking the Berkeley Food Institute for allowing me to be here tonight. I'm a fan of these programs and have spent time where you are as an observer, so it's an honor for me to be on this side speaking for the first time. I also want to thank the Berkeley Food Institute for making these programs available to the general public, because all of us who are working on issues of healthy food access in the Bay Area really benefit from having a community that's fully informed about these issues and more engaged to help make change in our communities. So I'm hopeful that that's one of the things that can emerge from our conversation this evening, is all of you feeling more engaged and more ready to help change our food system for the better. So the challenges that our food system, the challenge of making good food affordable is big and complex, as are all of the challenges that are facing our food system. But tonight, I want to talk to you from the perspective of a local organization that's working on these issues on a daily basis on three elements: accessibility, affordability, and sustainability. So in terms of accessibility, there are a number of initiatives that are really working to disrupt the food channels, the distribution channels that are part of our industrialized and commercialized food system. And I believe that our organization, by operating farmers markets, is a big part of that. So PCFMA operates 60 farmers markets in 7 Bay Area counties. Last year, we served about 300 farmers and 350 other food-based businesses who sold within our markets. Altogether, our markets had about 2.7 million customer visits. So that sounds really impressive by itself until you think about the scale of how many people are in the Bay Area. And so it's clear that while farmers markets are still very popular, they still are not reaching as many people and having the level of disruption that we would like to see. So farmers markets are very unique in California because California is the only state that requires that the farmers markets be certified and the farmers who sell in those markets also be certified. So that is done as part of the guarantee to you as a consumer that the food that you're purchasing in a farmer's market is coming to you from the farmer that grew that crop. So that certification has really helped to sustain local farmers, but as I'll mention in a moment, it has also led to some drawbacks that can sometimes stop farmers markets from being the solution to healthy food access. There are now over 700 farmers markets in the state of California, over 150 of them in the Bay Area alone, and the USDA has counted over 8,500 nationwide. So it is part of a huge movement that is beginning to shift the conversation about food in a number of places. But farmers markets are very effective, and a lot of them are targeting low-income food desert areas. But that's not exclusively where they work. At PCFMA, we operate one market in a parking lot that's shared with the Lunardi's grocery store, and another in a park that's across the street from a Walmart neighborhood market. So if those farmers markets didn't operate, it would not eliminate food access for those communities, though it definitely would be curtailed because there'd be less community choice. So we believe that there are opportunities for farmers markets to coexist with other types of commercial food retail, as long as that there continues to be ongoing support for farmers markets and what really makes them unique. What we have found when we have gone into low-income and food desert areas is that it can often be a challenge to get the residents of that area to shift their buying habits to adapt to a farmer's market. So if you think about it, the food desert is referring to a lack of local food access, but the people within that community are still managing to feed their families, even if we're not feeding them the most healthful food that we would like. So they have often established patterns of how to get food, which may mean one shopping trip per week, or the day that they're able to borrow a neighbor's car. They know the bus routes that get them to the grocery store, wherever it is that they feel that they can get food. Asking them to disrupt those patterns that have been established and that are working for their family to try shopping in a new way is often a huge challenge. And it takes a long time, and it takes a concerted effort at a number of levels to really help farmers markets be effective in many of these food desert areas. But in addition to farmers markets, there are many other programs that are working on the issues of healthy food access in the Bay Area. In San Jose, the Health Trust, through its Good to Go effort, is making healthy foods more accessible at corner stores. Here in Berkeley, the Ecology Center operates a weekly produce stand that engages youth to sell affordable food. But one of the most exciting ventures that I'm seeing that's really helping to shift the conversation about healthy food is this new mobile farmers markets. This is essentially taking the very popular food truck model, but stocking it with fresh fruits and vegetables and heading out to sell that product in low-income communities. So as Mary said, I'm on the board of directors of Fresh Approach, which is, I think, one of the most creative organizations that's really trying to tackle the issues of healthy food access in the Bay Area. So they've been operating for 2 years a mobile farmers market that they call Freshest Cargo. Last year, Freshest Cargo sold over 24,500 pounds of healthy food purchased from 44 California farms in 19 low-income Bay Area communities. So they had 2 vehicles operating, and between those 2 vehicles, they made nearly 900 stops on 191 days of operation. So making a huge impact of getting food into places that wouldn't otherwise have access to fresh and healthy food, and especially would not have access to food that's coming to them directly from California farms. So the advantage that Freshest Cargo and other mobile farmers markets are able to offer is that they are able to go into communities in a way that's much more flexible and often much more responsive than a traditional farmers market. So one of the ways that a farmers market and its certification is a drawback for healthy food access is that requirement that farmers only sell the products that they have grown themselves. So in order to have a farmers market with sufficient variety to really meet community demand, that means you need to have multiple farmers. Every farmer is an additional staff person that farm has to pay. It's more space on the street, which increases costs for the market operator, versus a mobile farmers market, which can come in with one staff member on a much smaller footprint and be much more effective in serving that community, which is why we're excited to be working with Freshest Cargo to help make our farmers markets the site where they can purchase food from our farmers to load up their truck every week. But access is only a part of the equation. I mean, having a convenient place to purchase food is not going to be very effective for a family if they don't have the funds to afford that purchase. So in the world of farmers markets, the affordability is complicated by the fact that while it may appear that a farmers market is a single business, in effect, each farm that sells there is its own individual business, so therefore each one sets its own pricing. So we try to work with our farmers to help them understand the community that they're serving so they can set appropriate prices, but it's not always something that happens very easily. There are also a number of governmental programs that are really helping to increase healthy food access, such as CalFresh, which is California's version of the SNAP program, WIC. But each of these programs, when applied to a farmer's market, comes with its own unique set of challenges. The good thing is that there are organizations locally, such as the Ecology Center here in Berkeley, that are helping to overcome those obstacles. So the Ecology Center is leading the statewide Market Match program, which since 2009 has provided incentives for those who are on CalFresh to use their benefits in a farmer's market by providing them extra buying power for fresh fruits and vegetables. So they're able to stretch their food dollars while improving the quality of their diet through the Market Match program. So finally, I want to address the importance of sustainability. Because as we talk about ways to disrupt our food system, we have to make food not just more accessible and affordable, but we have to ensure that those enhancements are sustainable. And one of the most important ways that we can do that is to continue to involve and support small farmers through this process, because that is the core of where all of the healthy food comes from that we are all interested in. As a consumer, you have an incredible way of influencing that with every purchase that you make. When you choose an apple over a bag of chips, when you decide to go to a farmer's market instead of the local grocery store. But you also have incredible power as a voter. Every time that you speak or choose not to speak to a member of the legislature about issues of land access, about water, about how your tax dollars are invested, you're making a decision about what the future of our food system looks like. So I hope that all of you will consider those issues and look for those opportunities to be engaged. If you are interested in finding an opportunity to work on this on a regular basis, we do have paid internships available at our organization and at Fresh Approach this summer. You can find out more at pcfma.org or freshapproach.org or see me after the panel. I'm happy to give you information about that. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. Mary, I love your name. I said I love your name because
you have to stop meeting like this. I too appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue this evening. And you might say that I'm a practitioner. And I'm with UC Cooperative Extension in Alameda County. But you can find us all over the state. There's about 200 of us in about 57 locations in California. And our major role as advisors is to make sure that our applied research and development information and findings are delivered to our constituents in a format that shows respect, that it facilitates learning and understanding and the ability to apply these skills that are learned to their personal lives, their families, and their communities. And we're hoping that overall that we are contributing to the growth of healthy families and communities throughout California. We also believe that our research and extension will also contribute to a better understanding of how people in other states and other parts of the world also live, and that we can learn from them and they from us. We are often called boots on the ground because we have that capacity to connect directly with the consumer. In some of our programs, we have actually been able to go into the homes and look into the refrigerator and see what's in the cabinet, and see what's under the bed, and that kind of stuff. So that you meet people where they are, and that our programs and our initiatives are actually addressing their particular needs. Like the Dietary Guidelines, they are policies, but they have to be applied. And when we apply these policies, they are with people. They are not numbers. They are not in abstract. And we do have to be very careful about how we do it and to what extent what we are doing makes sense, and that it is something that is affordable and accessible. Many of the advisors throughout the state, and they work not only, I am from the Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources that you call Human Resources. Then, of course, there's an Agriculture Division, and there's a Natural Resource Division. But we have to be very sure that what we do, what we say, and how we do it, that we don't turn the consumer off from the desire to eat healthy or to improve the wellness in their homes and their communities. So part of my role is to make sure that our programs and services are consumer friendly. More recently, I've been doing a lot of work with seniors. And this is part of the demographics that you may or may not find a lot of funding there for nutrition and wellness programs. Many of the funds we get through expanded food and nutrition education and SNAP-Ed, seniors are left out in a lot of ways. So a majority of our funding are going really to young people and youth. But you may find that there is no community where you won't find elders. And oftentimes, the elders, if we don't address their needs, then their trips to the emergency room and their dollars that are spent on health care impacts upon the dollars that we may be able to use for the young generation. So a part of my mission over the few years has been to really look at the nutrition education, the food safety, and the food access needs of seniors. And we did a small project several years ago that Pacific Coast Farmers Markets and Fresh Approach participated on, where we actually went into low-income senior housing complexes. They are not senior centers, because seniors who go to the centers are more or less mobile. They can get up and move about. These are the places where they live, and many of them there are actually homebound. They may even have caregivers. They have problems with transportation, and they don't normally get the type of programs that may be in senior centers. Oftentimes, there is nothing. So we took our program directly to the housing complexes, because they normally have a cafeteria, or they may have an activity room where you can go in and conduct programs. So with special funding from the Social Services Department in this county, and also in collaboration with Pacific Coast Farmers Market Association for Fresh Approach, we did a special project where not only did we do the nutrition and wellness and physical activity education that we took directly to the centers and the housing complexes, but at the end, and it was an 8-week program, and at the end of each session, they would have a mobile fresh fruit produce stand there. They would get up from their class, go right out and do their shopping, and then the rest of the community then could shop thereafter. We had one session in Newark at a senior site there, and we were so amazed. We had 108 seniors show up for a class. Now, what are you going to do with 108? And many of them had diverse languages, which means we had to find translators. And we had to group them into groups, throughout the huge auditorium, and had volunteer translators to work directly with them. But in that group, after 8 sessions, 100 graduated with certificates. We find that if you offer them what they need, they will accept it. They're one of the most gracious groups that I ever worked with. And the one thing they wanted us to continue was the mobile produce stands, because many of them have to wait until somebody take them to the grocery store. They have to get or get a taxi, and sometimes they can only go once a month. And fresh produce don't last a whole month, even in my refrigerator. I don't know about yours. And many of them have very little refrigeration, so they end up buying things in cans that they can store in the closet or under the bed and that kind of thing. So one of the initiatives that I'm very interested in is to develop a community collaboration that allows us then to address as many of the low-income senior housing in Alameda County as we can. And right now I have a graduate student who's doing the assessment to trying to see where these projects are and how many are they involved in. And hopefully by the summer we'll have some feeling of what the magnitude of that need is. And in my last 2 minutes, I'd like just to mention briefly some of the projects that we have had over the years in Alameda County. We have had since 1968, and some of you probably heard about it, is the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. Alameda County was one of the first counties in the country that was a part of the demonstration of the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. We have had SNAP-Ed, used to be called FISNAP, now it's called UC CalFresh, in Alameda County since 1994. And we've had a special project from the California Nutrition Network for Healthy Californians, and we had that for 14 years. We also have had funds from the Haas Junior Fund Foundation, where we worked with in-home education in 6 of our low-income housing projects. And we also, at the time, was also working in San Francisco County, where they were gleaning homegrown fresh fruits and vegetables and redistribute them to the needy. We had funds from the Howland Hospital substance abuse funds that we also went into low-income areas and did nutrition and wellness education. I've already mentioned the project with the Social Services Department. So we have had a variety of funding sources and projects in Alameda County trying to address the needs of low-income people, because we focus on low-income people because that's where the funding comes from. And we don't normally have very much money to work with other populations groups, but we hope that the issue of food access and food affordability is really addressed, because just recently I saw in the news much concern about the number of what we call pre-baby boomers that are going hundreds. Millions and millions of people who are nearing retirement, and many of them do not have retirement funds that you can survive on. And many of them are going hungry. And again, my focus is still on the senior population, because I believe that we can do better, and we need to do better. And I thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. It's a great time. A great time to give our whole panel a round of applause, so thank you for initiating that. I had asked Nina and Ann if you'd indulge me just a second to talk, before I ask some questions of our panel, a little bit about the background that my organization brings to this conversation about food. PolicyLink is a national advocacy and action institute, and we focus on achieving and attaining racial and economic equity. So food is not our primary focus. In fact, the issues that we work on aren't our primary focus. It is in achieving equitable communities. But we recognize to do this, we have to understand and develop our own level of expertise in the issues that people who live in those communities are confronting. And so we've found that working on food, and we have probably been doing it for about 10 or so years, food systems issues really is a tremendous vehicle because it is one of those tangible ways in which our current system is incredibly inequitable, and it also lends itself to great conversations, great strategies, great policy developments with stakeholders from across the system, both people who live in those communities that have never had adequate access, as well as policymakers and systems leaders and academics and all kinds of folks. But I want to make sure that I underscore that for us at PolicyLink, we go across the spectrum of what it means to work toward a more equitable food system. That means from farm to disposal and everything in between. And frankly, that's the way our food system is currently manifesting itself in ways that are very, very unequal. So whether it's jobs in the food system or small business opportunities or the lack thereof, wages that are paid along the way in all of those food arenas, whether it is the health disparities that are confronted by low-income folks and people of color because of their lack of access or not having the ability to afford healthy food. If it is a question of the land use that relates from food. So you may take for granted that having a store in your community is an asset, but not if that store is run down and is actually attracting activity and criminal activity around it, which is the case in many low-income communities that don't have a grocery store, or what you would consider to be a traditional grocery store, but are overrun with liquor stores and convenience stores where there's a lot of criminal activity swirling around the outside, and on the inside there's access only to very sugary, very salty foods, the foods that you don't want to see in your dietary guidelines. And what that does to a neighborhood, even if you don't shop there, you're still confronting what happens in your neighborhood as a result. But if you create an equitable community, those food retail opportunities are assets to your neighborhood and not detriments. And so it's that overall health of your economic and individual health, as well as a just system that we want to try to achieve through our work around the food system. So I appreciate the chance to give that little commercial for PolicyLink and the way we view the world. And it's also going to be my lead-in to some questions, I think, for the panel. Because as you were all talking, and it's fascinating to hear how your work all fits together, sort of a bit of a landscape, a look at some various puzzles, and how these things all fit together. It occurred to me that we have these guidelines, for example, and how comprehensive they are and how they've evolved over time, as you indicated. But I'm wondering whether those guidelines are useful to help us really change our food environments. And so I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about that, and that, frankly, all of you can do that. I think, Mary, you just did an excellent job, for example, of talking about the special needs of a particular population, seniors, and you made some reference to folks that aren't all English language speakers. But I'm hopeful that you can all also talk about the other groups and how some of the programs that you're working on fit in with that. I'm thinking specifically about the difference in rural communities as opposed to high-cost communities like the one we're in right now, where your government benefit doesn't stretch very far. I know I'm throwing all the questions in at once. But if you can, and you really can answer any aspect of this, I'm going to ask each of you to just pick something that I've said or augment it with your reflections, because this is a really big topic and we're not going to get too much time to break it down. And then just the last thing is that if there are any innovations or connections to our systems that make sense. You mentioned, for example, Alan, the mobile markets, which I love, and we're working on some of those as well. Because of transportation, because the whole connection between where you live and how far you might have to go to get food that's affordable or high quality or healthy. And so what do we do about the impact that transportation has? And maybe the last one is technology. And so as we talk about all these government benefit programs and people are swiping, how come they can swipe and use their government benefits at Burger King, but not at the farmer's market? That really makes me upset. So it's not true across the board, but too often. So again, and Mary, I think you've got the expertise, particularly of being on the ground with people and hearing what they're saying, so any insights you have would be great. So we're going to go back across the panel, give you each a few minutes, and then after they answer, we'll open it up to the rest of you, if you have any questions left.
Mary, that was quite a cornucopia there.
Sorry about that.
So this set of remarks is really talking about the application of the dietary guidelines in new venues. One of the new features of the 2015-2020 dietary guidelines for Americans was really the overarching guideline number 5, to support healthy eating patterns for all. Everyone has a role in helping to create and support healthy eating patterns in multiple settings nationwide, from home to school to the workplace to our communities. This is actually an elevated message in the dietary guidelines. And we have realized that changing individual knowledge, attitude, and behaviors, what constitutes healthy eating, and being able to equip individuals with the cognitive abilities to select healthful choices is one piece of, as Alan mentioned, a very complicated puzzle. And we recognize that we have to use the dietary guidelines in very innovative ways to affect systems change. And so in Chapter 3 in the Dietary Guidelines, in the policy document, we have outlined a myriad of ways in which the dietary guidelines can help support healthful eating settings, the environment in which we live, work, and play. Now with that, we are also exploring, so I encourage you to take a look at that, because we are really putting forth a new concept within the dietary guidelines and using federal nutrition policy as a leverage point or as a point of negotiation in assuring that the settings in which we live, work, and play can support healthy eating and physical activity behaviors. And so applying that systems approach is really important to be able to affect change. We can't totally rely on changing an individual's knowledge about what constitutes healthy eating. We also have to assure that the setting in which we live can further support our goals. And so a couple of things that I also wanted to mention on that note, Mary, is, and I appreciate Alan's comments, because the systems approach is extremely complicated. And when we talk about increasing access to healthful food, we're talking about the food supply chain. And with that comes not only tremendous politics, but a lot of complexity across that. And with this particular administration, I'm speaking from a federal perspective here, with this particular administration, we have seen some landmark movement in being able to change food systems. And this level of investment in especially local and regional food systems and support for specialty crops and farmers markets is truly unprecedented. Just to give you some figures, and actually Alan stole one of my figures. So on the farmers market ends of things, as Alan said, over 8,500 farmers markets exist currently nationwide. The number of farmers markets has increased by 93% between 2006 and 2014. Things such as farmers market accepting SNAP benefits, or CalFresh here in California. 6,400 markets nationwide now accept SNAP benefits. This is up from only 750 markets back in 2008. So these things are definitely a priority of the administration. It's a priority for Secretary Vilsack and definitely under Secretary Kevin Concanon. When we look at things like farm to school, we are able to integrate not only healthy eating, but we're giving kids new experiences of gardening, and we're giving new economic opportunities to farmers. In 2010, USDA launched the Farm to School program, and just last month, looking at the 2013-2014 school year, school districts spent nearly $800 million on local and regionally sourced food as part of the Farm to School program. This is a 105% increase from the previous year. And so I could go on with all of the numbers from an infrastructure standpoint. Not only do we need to focus on where people access food, but we need to be looking at the entire food supply chain and making sure that each sector of the food supply chain is adequately supported. And I have to say, with this current administration, these are unprecedented priorities, these are unprecedented advances across our food system.
That's great. That's wonderful to know. I think for somebody that's been doing this work under previous iterations, we never saw these numbers. Thank you so much for sharing that. Go ahead, Al.
So yeah, I was thinking as Angie was speaking about, like, how is it that the federal food guidelines, affect my work on a daily basis? And I think we in the farmers market world feel a little bit lucky because primarily what we sell are, fresh fruits and vegetables. So, it's like easy. Yeah, right. we're complying nearly 100%. I think the real importance of the federal dietary guidelines is the way that they are helping to shift the conversation, because we use them to communicate with our customers. We put them into brochures encouraging parents to think about how they pack their kids' school lunches. What can you find at a farmer's market that your child will eat? And we use the dietary guidelines as proof, as this is what should be part of that child's lunch. In the East Bay, near where our office is, the Pittsburgh Unified School District is making a huge move to try to incorporate more locally grown food from nearby farms into their food chain, and they're trying to expand their capacity to also be that hub for other neighboring school districts. Those types of movements wouldn't happen without the conversation shifting that comes about through the dietary guidelines. I want to jump to one of your other questions about technology, because that's a huge issue that we are thinking about in the farmers market world. If you think about like a traditional grocery store shopping environment, you walk up to the check stand, everything's computerized, everything's scanned, you swipe your card, no cash changes hands. It's very different in a farmer's market. Sometimes I think about talk about what I do as like operating a traveling circus, because we appear in a parking lot like magic. These tents appear, people come out and have fun, but the infrastructure that a grocery store relies on in terms of like high-speed telephone lines, electricity, overhead, fluorescent lighting. By the way, no one and no food looks good in fluorescent lighting, so that's why another reason farmers markets are better. But I mean, that type of infrastructure doesn't exist in a farmers market environment. I think SNAP is a huge example of how important it is for those that have come to rely on farmers markets in their communities to have government at all levels be mindful of technology as they're making changes. When the state of California switched from paper food stamps to the EBT system, we saw our numbers of food stamp redemptions in our markets drop off. It went from tens of thousands of dollars per year to only several $100s per year. Because of that, there was a huge obstacle to being able to use that new EBT technology in farmers markets. Luckily, that technology has improved markedly, and so we are able now, once again, to make that access widely available in all of our farmers markets. After SNAP, the second largest federal food program is WIC. And California is under a mandate to switch to an electronic WIC to get away from those paper vouchers by the year 2020. And so we are really concerned about what does that mean in a farmer's market environment, because they're talking about it being a totally separate system than what CalFresh uses. And are they even thinking about how to make that available in a farmer's market environment where you don't have all of that technology? And for people who need to rely on farmer's markets, who want to make that choice to shop for something in a farmer's market, it's very important to them and to us that we address those technology issues up front and not wait until after it's implemented, so that there's a 3 to 5 year delay in getting people access again, as there was with the transition to EBT with SNAP.
Great. Thank you so much. Mary, any feedback on that question I asked? That long question?
I'm peering over her shoulder, and this was not planned, but she has Chapter 3 of the Dietary Guidelines sitting
Of course. She carries it with her everywhere.
That's wonderful.
We
That's
all do,
wonderful.
actually.
We do use these guidelines.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking of how the dietary guidelines help direct what we do at the local level. And I'm just thinking of our various programs. Right now, we have programs that for early childhood parents with early childhood early childhood education centers. We have programs, nutrition education programs for the parents of these preschool children. We have nutrition education programs for adults. And of course, we have them for seniors, the elderly. And we train teachers in early childhood centers on special curricular that addresses nutrition and wellness and physical activity. And these curricula are approved, and they are based on the Dietary Guidelines. We train the teachers, and then they are expected to teach at least 6 lessons to their preschool children. Then we go back at maybe the end of the school year, and we call it the third quarter of our program year, and we do what we call teacher observations. We have tools where the teachers over the year, after they have taught this nutrition and wellness and physical activity with their students, they're able then to respond to questions about what are they observing, what kind of changes are they observing. We also train the parents, some of the parents in the early childhood centers to assist the teachers and to go out in the community and spread the word of healthy eating and healthy beverages and increasing physical activity. And again, the Dietary Guidelines are the basis of that training and information. We also have at some of our early childhood sites gardening education. We have about 10 now where, again, teachers, we have a gardening curricular, and also that information is also based on some of the needs for increase in fruit and vegetable consumption, which comes right out of the Dietary Guidelines. And teachers are able to not only have their children grow the vegetables or the fruit, then they have the taste testing, and they too, at the end of the year or when their series is over, can provide us with some feedback in terms of their observation of what has happened. Are the children eating more fruits and vegetables? Or and those that are bringing snacks, what are they bringing in their snacks? And of course, for our adults, those curriculums are also based on the Dietary Guidelines, where we teach them, not only what is healthy, but how to prepare food safety issues. And we're hoping that in training the head of a household that we are impacting that whole family. And in that situation, we do pre and post tests. So we'll know how many servings of fruits and vegetables they were eating prior, and then after the end of the 6-week series, or 7, depending, we'll have some appreciation of whether or not they have made any changes. Also, even if we are doing just a single workshop, we also have a tool where we ask them, even though after this session tonight, if you were inclined to do some kind of behavior change, and maybe we wouldn't find it tonight, but we could ask you, what do you intend to do? So even if just one-time contact, we are able to ask them what it is that you intend to do with this learning. And again, we have already at one of our senior centers, our senior housing projects, where we did our pilot project. A couple of years ago, we have restarted that fresh produce stand. And it is only once a month, but we are hoping if we were able to develop a strategy that we can serve these seniors throughout the county, then maybe we could bring those mobile stands there more frequently, maybe like every 2 weeks. And again, we also have a few senior sites where there are garden plots. And so we are also starting senior gardening opportunities again, trying to address the whole issue of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy eating. And hopefully, out of that whole concept, we'll be able to provide seniors with more fresh produce. And many of the regular low-income housing projects, not just seniors, are usually located in blighted areas. And we had a special project that the Nutrition Network funded where we went into these housing projects and tried to start little garden plots right in front of the apartments. And the problem that was there, and many of them didn't have water. There was a water spigot outside, most of them was broken. And they were trying to do this by bringing hoses out of their bathroom windows or kitchen windows, trying to address that concern, but oftentimes it is not easy for them to do this. So we find that many people may want to make a change, even in terms of increasing fresh fruits and vegetable consumption. But if they are, again, living in the blighted areas and in what you call the food deserts, and they don't have that access, it limits their ability to gain access to fresh produce and fresh fruit. And many of them end up, with cans on the shelf. And so my concern is that if we're going to teach them this healthy eating, and they are not in a position to gain access to these healthy food, then we are really creating problems because they become discouraged. And so as we try to improve healthy eating, we also do need to look at accessibility and affordability, because otherwise, one of them told me you are preaching out of both sides of your neck. I don't know what that meant.
I do.
And one of the seniors had said to us that they want us, those of us who are educators, they don't want us just to bring a canned presentation. And that is one of the things, we have standardized curriculum and we have approved curriculum. And sometimes we do show videos. And she said, we want to have a dialogue. And I'm so happy we're having a dialogue this evening. And I don't want you to ever bring me another video.
They can do that.
Thank you.
Well, great. So I'm so glad that all three of you gave some reflection and feedback about not just the individual's behavior, but also the systems and environments that need to change around our communities in order to address this issue of food access, food affordability. I'm often around folks from the public health community, and they will say things like, let's make the healthy choice the easy choice. And I always say, well, that's great if you have a choice. And so what we need to do is to make sure it's possible for people to have a choice. So now we're going to shift over. Since I have lots of questions, they're not going to let me ask any more until you guys get a chance to answer questions. And the only way to keep me from asking more is to fill up all the time we have left with your questions. So I think Anne's got a mic. She's going to ask folks to come down if they have a question or a comment that you'd like to share with us and get some feedback from our experts. Who wants to be the first person? We've got a hand up here. Oh, she's got you. I see.
We didn't talk much about affordability. We talked about access and good habits, but truth is, and you run farmers markets, it's a lot more expensive to buy that kind of produce. And if you want meat that hasn't been treated with antibiotics and hormones, or all that stuff is way more expensive. So how does this superior food, and I believe it is superior food, make it to someone who can't, who doesn't have the kind of income to afford these things?
Well, I think that is part of the challenge, and part of what we believe that the sustainable solution has to be focused on not just what's good for the consumer, but what's good for the farmer. That the farmer and the farm labor have to have sustainable incomes to be able to survive. And that the part of the challenge of our food system the way it is that we have been squeezing out the value of labor at many levels. especially I would say in like food processing, food delivery, we don't value the labor that goes into those steps. That there are products that you will find on a supermarket shelf where likely the person who designed the label makes more off of that can than the person who grew the food that's in it. And that, we think that we need to shift that paradigm. That if we need to value the food, we need to value the food, then we need to value the people whose labor is going into that food. And so yes, it is a challenge. And I do disagree a little bit that prices at farmers markets are more expensive. I think definitely with meat that is the case, because the way that the meat tends to be raised is more labor intensive. And therefore, there is a higher cost to it. I think that for most fruits and vegetables, especially for those who are committed and understand how to eat in season, that when you have something that's at its peak season, and you're able to get it from a local source, it's very affordable. The other challenge that we will see in a farmer's market in terms of making that comparison to a grocery store pricing is that grocery stores will do loss leaders that a farmer's market will not. Because within a farmer's market, each farm is their own business. So, we can't expect the corn guy to give his corn away to bring you in so that you'll buy peaches also during the summer, but that's what the grocery stores do. So we are, at a certain level, the game's a little bit rigged in terms of that one-to-one comparison. When we have gone out and done grocery basket comparisons, we have found that consistently our farmers markets are equal to or slightly less than the prevailing prices that people would pay in grocery stores around the area. So I say in terms of meat, in terms of dairy, you are right in terms of the price. I would say in terms of fruits and vegetables, I think that the farmers markets are very competitive. The other piece that we have learned through experiences like working directly with people like Mary's programs have, as we have heard from consumers who have said, because when they buy food that is fresher, because it's coming to them that without having gone through that food stream and spent as much time in the warehouse, it will last longer in their refrigerator, not under the bed, but in the refrigerator it will last longer. So they feel even if they are paying an extra 50 cents, that they have less food waste, and so therefore they feel that it's still something that's affordable for them.
So unless our other panelists feel the need to answer or respond, add on to the response, we'll take another question.
I would only like to add one additional element on that. And we've seen this evolution and progression in organic sales. So for example, the number of certified organic operations in the U.S. has grown to almost 22,000 producers today, certified organic producers today. That's a 300% increase since 2002. That is an example of how we have seen organic prices come down a little bit because more people are supplying them. There's been a greater investment in the local and regional food system infrastructure than there ever has been. And so with additional investment in these areas, just in the last 6 years alone, USDA has made over $1 billion of investments in regional and local food businesses and infrastructure projects. The more that we make an investment in that, we put the food on much more of a level playing field. The other thing I'd like to add is the Leopold Center for Sustainable Agriculture did a study several years ago that looked at the price of fruits and vegetables at farmers markets in Iowa as compared to the traditional retail outlets, and they found that because of the seasonality, the local product was actually less expensive than what was available in the retail store. So seasonality has a lot to do with price as well. Although you're here in California, you don't have the seasonality that we do. But
much longer season.
Yes. And so making more of an investment in local regional infrastructure, food system infrastructure is going to enable more product to be available and seen on a much more level playing field.
I think we've got the mic right there with you.
I actually have two questions for Angela. The first one is, I know this current system that we have is really complicated, but I just wanted to know your opinion on the contradictions between the dietary guidelines and the crops that we currently choose to subsidize. And then I have another question after, but should I ask that first? Or
Can I take a
Good question.
Can I take a restroom break?
Yeah, she's going to have to step out for a second. It's a good question, a hard one.
So the question on alignment, right? And traditionally, yes, there has been a disconnect between what has been promoted around healthy eating versus the investment in agriculture production at a federal level. But things are changing. I think the last 6 to 8 years has demonstrated a turning point in the investment, especially at the USDA, in regards to specialty crop production. That's the way they call it. It's the fruits and vegetables that local and regional producers have. There's been a substantial investment. A majority of the $1 billion that I just quoted was invested in more than 40,000 local and regional food businesses. A majority of them do fall in that specialty crop arena. And so the investment has changed at the federal level. Is it anywhere near it should be? And this is my opinion. No. No. As a registered dietitian, as a practitioner, no, the investment isn't where it should be.
And you had another question?
Okay, I'm not super familiar with the new changes since January, but I was just wondering if the new dietary guidelines talks about like a reduction in meat consumption, because I know like with CAFOs, like confined animal feeding operations, it's been proven to be like a main driver of climate change. So I just wondered if it addresses that.
Actually, there has always been a recommendation on the consumption of lean meats, and the emphasis in this edition of the dietary guidelines really is to vary your protein intake. And so there's increased emphasis on fish, nuts, legumes, that type of thing, and with an emphasis on lean meats. So poultry and eggs and lean meats.
Do we have another question?
To the affordability issue, about 3 years ago, Mark Bittman had a New York Times article, and he had a few slides in it. One of them was 4 McDonald's meals was $27.89. Dinner for 4 with a roast chicken, a baked potato, and a spinach salad was in the mid-teens. And a rice and beans with some other fresh vegetables was under $10 to feed 4 people. Is there a resource that would take all the many of the standard fast food meals at a variety of the outlets and then step it back and say, here's what it would cost you if you created it yourself with conventional food at a grocery store, and here's what it would cost you if you created it yourself using organic supplies from your local farmer's market. And I believe that there is an issue about willingness to, and finding the time and making it a priority to make a sharp chef's knife and a cutting board and a salad spinner the primary public health tools.
So I hope the panel won't mind if I try to answer that question, at least comment on it. I don't know of a resource that breaks it down in the way that you're suggesting, but I'm going to toss back to you another way to look at that, because if you're a mom, let's say, or a dad, and you're on public assistance and you have more than one child and you're on public transportation and you live in an SRO, which not only doesn't have a restroom in your unit, but doesn't have a kitchen, the notion of a salad spinner and a chef's knife is really quite ambitious, that if you have to travel an hour each way to get to a store that has the ingredients that you just described, as opposed to passing 4 or 5 fast food outlets on every block on the way, taking your kids to and from school on a bus and to or from your job, if you're lucky enough to have one on a bus, you find that the cost has to add into it the time and the stress, because it's not just a one-time, or let's see if I can do it for a couple of weeks and live on a food stamp budget. It's every day, and there's no end in sight. So I would have asked if I have more time about the minimum wage issue as it relates to impacting the question of affordability. We are not going to be able to, and probably it's for the best, to touch on some of the politics of the cost of food, these issues about global decision-making and global subsidy and the way in which our food system really is financed. But I do worry when we start the discussion on the actions that need to change on the part of the folks that have the least amount of resources and the fewest options, as opposed to what we can do on the other end of it. Not to say that our individual behavior isn't important, not to say that we don't need more education about how to make the best choices, but our systems don't support folks at that end of the spectrum, and we have a long way to go before we get them there. So that would be my response to your question.
So Mary, I just want to call out our questioner. So those who don't know, Dr. Preston Mehring recently retired from Kaiser Permanente. Probably did more than anyone I've ever heard of to shift how an institution thinks about food. And I think what he was able to do in his time there is really amazing. And the fact that in retirement he continues to advocate for these positions and to spend his time at sessions like this and to call me up in my office with great ideas about how we can continue to increase healthy food access, I think he really needs to be acknowledged for the leadership that he's brought to this issue in the Bay Area.
Wonderful. Nice to meet you.
You make great points. It's very, very clear that it's a complex issue. It really is important to look at all sides of it. I mean, people that do, access farmers markets and fresh fruits and vegetables, make them possible. It does take time and commitment. And what we're trying to do is to make that more and more possible for people. And to have all the time to spend any to make it to work both at the individual level and at the system level, of course. That's obvious.
Yep. Other questions? We haven't gotten this side of the room yet, so I'm going to see if we can get somebody on this side.
She's got a microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. So we'll get you next. Sorry about that.
So I have two questions, actually, and my first one is for Angie, and the second one is for whoever wants to answer it, but I'll ask that one next. So this first one might need a little bit of context for the audience, and feel free to expand or correct me if I'm wrong. But the Thrifty Food Plan is a market basket of foods developed by the USDA, and it's the nation's standard of a minimal cost healthy diet, and it also determines the maximum SNAP allotment. So I was wondering if we can expect Thrifty Food Plan to change anytime soon, to be updated to the new Dietary Guidelines, and how we can expect it to change. And similarly, I was wondering how you would respond to criticism saying Thrifty Food Plan might not be the best basis for SNAP, and that it might not actually be that healthy, affordable, or realistic, considering how much time it takes or the lack of variability for different dietary restrictions or different food cultures.
Yeah. No. This is amazing. Thank goodness I had to testify in front of Congress 4 times in the last 12 months. Excellent question. I guess to provide a little bit of framework for the response, the Center for Nutrition Policy and Promotion does the USDA food plans, one of which is the Thrifty Food Plan, which determines the benefits for SNAP. We do not implement SNAP. SNAP is implemented by the Food and Nutrition Services, our sister agency within USDA. So I wanted to make that clear first. Our role is simply to conduct the economic analytics to support the Thrifty Food Plan, as well as the low cost, the moderate, and the liberal food plans. The Thrifty Food Plan determines food benefits for SNAP. The moderate, the liberal, or the low cost, the moderate, and the liberal are used in a variety of fashions, specifically by the Department of Defense, and to some degree, state agencies use those plans to determine foster care payments and other type of assistance to families. Yes, in addition to the Thrifty Food Plan, we do a lot of other nutrition and economic analytic work within CNPP. Now that we have the new Dietary Guidelines, all of those elements will be updated, and we do have on the docket for this year to update the Thrifty Food Plan. I have no idea what direction that's going to go in. There are 6 elements that are part of the mathematical modeling behind the Thrifty Food Plan. And once we get new CPI data in June, that will be applied. And we're hoping to be able to have a new report for the Thrifty Food Plan sometime this year. Okay?
Yeah, I think it was right here.
So 2 questions. One for you, Angie, sort of following up on that is your work going to also update the National School Lunch program, and what kind of guidelines that has? And then I've got a question for you, Alan. Are there any efforts to incentivize farmers markets to donate leftover produce to community organizations that serve low-income communities?
Okay, so hopefully most of you are aware that the Child Nutrition Reauthorization is in a holding pattern. It's stuck right now. And so the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, which was passed 5 years ago, was up for reauthorization. And it's the Child Nutrition Reauthorization that oversees the school lunch, school breakfast, summer feeding, as well as the WIC program. The Senate has already passed their version. It's the House that's sitting on it. But the application of the Dietary Guidelines to the school lunch program will be in full support of the regulations that were passed in 2010. The quantitative amounts across the different food groups did not change from 2010. And so that's what gets applied to the school feeding program. And so that fundamentally is not going to change. But written within the rules is that the child nutrition programs must be using the most current dietary guidelines. So, but the House is currently sitting on the child nutrition reauthorization, so you might want to do some follow-up on that.
In terms of food collection at farmers markets, it's something that I know is happening. It's something that we encourage. In terms of incentivizing, the only incentive that I'm aware of that's in place is a tax deduction for the farmers who make that donation. The biggest challenge that we have seen is actually one of infrastructure for the food collectors. If you can imagine, or at least in our environment with our farmers markets, if we are operating on a street closure, typically we only have 1 hour from the time the market closes until we have to return that street back to the city for traffic. So everything needs to happen within a very short period of time. So all the tents need to come down, all the trucks need to get packed, they all need to get out of there, the street needs to get cleaned. So during that hour, we do try to encourage the gleaners to come through. But what we have heard is that the challenge is with so many farmers markets that run on similar time schedules, they don't have enough trucks and enough volunteers to hit many of them. So really, if where I have seen that the biggest breakdown is that if at the food bank level or the kitchen level, they could have more volunteers, more trucks that are willing to do that during this very specific period of time, primarily on weekends when most of the large markets are, that is the biggest step that we could make to help get more food donations from the farmers markets into those programs.
So I think we can do one more question. I'm going to leave it to you, Anne, to pick the person.
Can I ask? Ooh. Maybe that's not fair. Okay, no, I better not do that. I have a big systemic question. The elephant in the room is still the fast food domination.
So this is a question for the whole panel. I'm part of a group of students here from California and Switzerland, and we're touring California right now, looking at ways companies and organizations are innovating using IT and computer science to address challenges in the food system. So my question to all of you is, where do you see IT, computer science innovation playing a role in addressing challenges to food systems?
I'll let you guys start.
Well, Mary, you want to start since we've left you alone for a minute?
Probably you should have continued to leave me alone with this question.
Well, if you want to pass.
I'm happy to jump in because actually your question goes to where I'm spending my weekends these days, because we have recognized that one of the advantages of the movement towards like cloud computing and mobile access is that for the first time there is the technology is allowing us to even the playing field to a certain level between what people have at their desk and what we may have access to in our mobile environment in a farmer's market. So we are in the process of kind of a huge shift, and my staff who's sitting in the middle here are rolling their eyes at me already because they know I'm going to be saying these magic words, is that we're shifting to using the Salesforce cloud system for tracking all of our market data. Our goal is to be able to get to a point in a couple of years where our market manager can have a tablet in their hand, stand in front of a farmer, and enter all of that farmer's information directly into the tablet. The farmer enters a PIN, and they're automatically able to pay for their stall space, and everything happens behind the scenes. So it frees up a lot of our staff time for where right now they're spending time taking care of farmers to being able to invest more in engagement with the farmers about what's on their table and what new products are coming, but also engagement with consumers about what's in the market, leading them through the recipes and the brochures that we develop to help them educate themselves about nutrition. So I think that there is a lot that's happening in technology, at least from our perspective, that is going to make our mobile environment much more accessible and give us a lot more power to be more flexible in how we deal with our farmers, but also with our consumers.
I don't want to put you on the spot if you're...
It's an interesting question. As far as technology affecting CNPP, one of the advances that we took a risk on 4 years ago was we started to move into personalized online interactive tools. And so Super Tracker, which is available through our website, is one way of being able to provide a very personalized approach to individuals with assisting them in meeting their healthy eating and physical activity goals. We have a lot of challenge. Well, federal government has challenges with IT anyways, but we have numerous challenges on that front. But this really is the wave of the future, with being able to deliver more of a personalized approach to nutrition. And we've got a lot of wishes out there on the table. The next thing that we'd like to do is to be able to connect our current system to wearables. And so, because other folks are doing that, what we provide is an evidence-based interactive tool that is free for consumers to use. And it has proved to be quite effective, but we know that with wearables now, we need to have a little bit more, a greater degree of technology as part of our portfolio. And due to a variety of challenges, resources being the number one, may limit us being able to really expand to best meet the needs of consumers. So that's totally on the consumer front from an education and a nutrition intervention capacity. Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll say that my organization is really at the beginning of having conversations with the folks in the tech sector, some social entrepreneurs who might straddle both the food realm and the tech realm. And there are a couple of things that we're really seeking to do, and they go to the issue of making sure that some of the technology that's come into our food environment is also being applied to the problems of very low-income consumers, people of color, people who are frankly living in a food system that's just two-tiered. It's very different from what quote-unquote mainstream folks experience. So if you're living in a community like Berkeley and you can order food and someone brings it to you because you've pressed an app on your phone, we want to see that same sort of technology applied to the needs of low-income folks. So in my fantasy, the WIC store is not so much a store as a delivery place. Instead of that low-income mom that I referenced having to travel 2 hours by bus just to get to the WIC store and then get home, she pushes the app and the delivery gets made to her. So, that takes some of that issue away and maybe helps her be able to have the luxury to prepare the healthier meal. It also goes to the issue of addressing the food distribution, food hub segment of the market that isn't always able to access or benefit from the economies of scale, like big grocery store or a big network of grocery stores that can buy in bulk and always beats out the small corner store, convenience stores, even the ones that want to do well, serve fresh produce or sell fresh produce. It's too expensive for them to go and get it. We'd like to be able to see them connect to co-ops, delivery services, and the technology would really help make that viable. For most low-income people, it's certainly still not the case. At least there's some access through a cell phone to this technology, and so we'd like to see that be a piece that levels the playing field. And with that, I think I'm stuck, unless you have something you want to say, Mary.
Well, maybe I should.
You certainly have the right to do that.
And again, because I work predominantly with what we call indigent populations and low-income consumers, and many of them still have literacy problems. Literacy, income problems, and language. And so to develop something that could respond to those needs, because many of them do not respond to the literacy issue, the language need. And when you're out there with boots on the ground, you address the issue of affordability is always, in the forefront. And we find ourselves oftentimes trying to educate the consumer on how to make the best out of what they have. And that's entirely different from this is what a healthy diet is all about. They may or may not be able to afford it. So given in the context of what they have and what they can afford, then we have to get the best out of that scenario. And it is not always what it should be. And if a person can't read, and if they can't speak the language, and if they don't have the money, they said 3 strikes and you're out. So we have a lot of our consumers that they have the 3 strikes, and you just can't go in and deliver a theoretical concept. You have to start where they are.
So with that, I'm going to, sorry, I'm not allowed to, I have to get us out of the room, so I'm going to really ask you to join me. We had just in this last hour or so, an opportunity to hear from Angie a lot of insights, but particularly, I think, insight on the complex nature of our political and regulatory context, and really brought those dietary guidelines to life. From Alan, we heard really the challenges that are confronting farmers markets, but also an enormous number of innovations. And I think that it's very encouraging to me to hear about the various ways in which farmers markets are coming together and looking for new ways to make our systems work more effectively. And finally, from Mary, I think we heard, and I certainly got some real insight into what it's like to work with consumers, many examples of how the work that you do is addressing specific problems of populations. The insight that you gave for seniors, for example, is applicable to so many of the things that we see in our food system. So again, I'd like you to join me in thanking everybody. I get to turn it over to Ann to close us out, but we appreciated the time with you and loved the questions and the feedback that we got from you this evening. Thank you all so much.
Well, my name is Ann Thrupp. I am the Executive Director of the Berkeley Food Institute, and I just want to, again, thank you, all of you, for coming, but particularly also special thanks to all of our panelists, and Mary, a fantastic job as our moderator. We're really, really excited to have this group here tonight, and there's so much that can be covered. I mean, clearly, I was actually thinking before this started, this could be a whole semester class, because there's so many different dimensions of affordability in challenges of meeting affordability, sustainability, accessibility of healthy food. Even producing healthy food in the first place is a challenge, and sustainable food. So it really can be addressed from so many, the personal angle, the systemic angle. We didn't even get to the role of corporations and supply chain to the extent that might be addressed in this sort of issue, but it's very complex. I think that our panelists this evening gave an incredibly illuminating insights into this complex issue. And there's a lot more to be done. But I want to thank you all for joining us for this provocative discussion and invite you all to join us for a reception. We have food. We have special thanks to the Strata Group and Bancroft Catering, who've provided the food for this evening, complimentary of their generosity. And also Imperfect Produce has donated some produce for us, which is a great way to use fruits that don't meet first quality standards but are incredibly nutritious and healthy. I also thank all of our co-sponsors who've been involved with this. And special thanks to Nina Ichikawa, our policy director, for doing the heavy lifting on all the organization, and Rosalie Fanchel, our program manager, Julia, Agnes, others who work with BFI. And thank you again to all of you for coming and to our panelists this evening.